What is going down, the people of YouTube? It's your boy Zeri, back at you from Zeri's Mobile Gaming here today to talk to you about the Orcs. This is the first installment in the new series for noobs. So this is Orcs for Noobs. What we are going to be doing in this video is we're going to be looking at each character, reviewing their move kit, seeing what we learned from their move kit, talking about runes and potential synergies. We are going to touch briefly on each character. We're not going to spend a great deal of time on each character. So we are going to take a look at the Orc faction. But before we get into that, a couple things I wanted to mention is reminder of the giveaway. Once I hit 250 subscribers, anybody who is a subscriber and leaves a comment on any of the videos, starting with my last one, till we hit 250, will be put into a drawing for a $20 Google Play card or iTunes card. Also, I have been receiving a lot of questions from people over Discord asking if I knew how potency worked. And what I did is I wrote John the Guru, and his answer will be popping up on the screen now. And I asked him how it works. And he wrote me back and he says, you know, it works in that way. If the ability has a 40% chance to land a debuff, there's a roll, essentially 0 out of 100. So you take the 40% chance minus 100, and that gives you 60. If it's more than 60, that debuff is applied. So that's the first part of it. Then there's a second roll, which checks the resistance. So for example, if the tenacity is 50%, it's a buff resistance, and the potency is 20, the debuff resistance lowering it, there's a 30% chance on top of that it'll be applied. So if your potency is at 20% and the enemy's tenacity is at 50%, it has to be above a 70 essentially on that roll for it to be applied. So that is how potency works, so we will keep that in mind as we move forward. But I just wanted to answer everybody's question on that one. So getting right into it, the Orcs are probably the best early game faction to farm. So I started with Orcs. They are used to unlock Soleus, and we have a new Orc to the mix in Dieselrog. We also have an Orc, Mordoom, who is not in the game, but we're still going to go over his kit, so we kind of encapsulate everybody into the video. So let's get started. First one up on the list is Tromgar. Tromgar is the defender of the team. Now, he does have a leadership ability, and it is viable. Although if you're running strictly Orcs, I personally prefer Rantha, but we'll get into that. So his first ability here is called Crushing Blow. All the abilities are going to be read at level 6. That way it's just easier. It deals 210% of physical damage to an enemy, a 35% chance to stun a target. So what do we learn from that? Damage is good, and potency is good. Second ability is the Shield of the People. Tromgar assumes a defensive stance. Another use of this ability switches to an offensive stance. This effect cannot be prevented or removed. Changing stances applies taunt and counterattack for 2 turns. This is his taunting mechanism. Based off of this and being a defender, we know he needs survivability, which encapsulates armor, tenacity, health, shield. Third ability is Second Wind. Tromgar gains 2 regeneration stacks for 2 turns, removes all debuffs, and recovers 10% health. So we've learned that the health stat for Tromgar is very important as a secondary stat or as a fill-in primary on runes, so we got to keep that in mind. His passive ability is Veteran Tactician, and when in defensive stance, physical armor increases by 30%. When in offensive stance, physical damage increases by 30%. So we've also learned that armor is going to be big, and again, damage. Now his leadership ability is Supreme Khagan? I don't know how to say that. All allied orcs receive a 30% potency increase, a 30% tenacity increase. Whenever an allied orc inflicts a debuff on an enemy, all orcs recover 5% health for each debuff inflicted. What we can take away from that is, if you are running your orcs under a Tromgar lead, even with the additional potency, you want potency, and you want to run orcs that put in debuffs, such as a hard orc or a Corkrum. Dieselrog also inflicts debuffs, so you want to keep that in mind if you're running his lead. So just to recap here, we looked at his moveset and we found out that damage is important, we found out potency is important, we found out that armor is important, and we found out health is important. Now the way I would prioritize his secondary stats is damage. Obviously, anything with damage is going to be good. You want a little speed on him, not blazing fast, but you want a little more speed. You also want health and armor. Also, you want tenacity. Tenacity, because he counterattacks and he is the tank, you want him not to be able to get stunned or ability block, things of that nature. So tenacity is going to be important for him. And then you want to fill in with any other survivability stats. Putting health runes on him with some armor covers and encapsulates those bonuses he receives for using his normal mood kit, making them even stronger. I put on 2 healths and an armor, and in the northern rune we're looking for a primary of damage because that's all we can use, but then you want to fill it in, and this rune for me hits all the boxes: shield, potency, health, and armor. I got everything encapsulated in one rune. The second rune, I put a speed rune on. This is the only time I'm going to have to worry about speed. And then all 4 secondary stats check the box: tenacity, armor, health, and damage. The southeastern rune, we have armor as the primary. It's the only one you can receive there, but it works in his kit, so that's a plus. Then again, I have health, damage, shield, and damage %, increasing all the other things I want to do. The southern rune, I have a damage with health, shield, armor, and just a little speed. I'd rather have damage there, but it was a good tank rune. The southwestern rune, we have the possible primaries of shield and health. This shield one has the best secondary stats I have right now, which have shield, health, tenacity, and armor. And then in the northwestern rune, I have a potency. Now you could go tenacity if you're running a Tromgar lead to get the added potency, but I run a Rantha lead, so I went with potency to make sure he's putting on those stuns. And then it has armor, health, armor, and damage. So again, it encapsulates everything. So when you look at Tromgar, some possible synergies for Tromgar is he can be a plug-and-play tank on pretty much any team. The fact that he gives himself counter chance and can inflict stun on his basic makes him an amazing character. So he does not have to be running strictly orcs. I've talked about his possible synergies with a Singeal because Singeal is based on regeneration. Next up on the list we have Rantha. She is an orc, obviously, fighter, ranger, traveler, and a leader. Looking at her abilities, the first ability deals 240% of physical damage and calls Battle Poo to assist if he is alive. So we learn damage. Ability 2 is Summon Beast, and you summon Battle Poo with Taunt at 80% of Rantha's health and 50% of her damage. Only one Battle Poo can be summoned at a time. Using this ability again will restore 50% of Battle Poo's health. So we learn that when you summon Battle Poo, his overall health pool is based off 80% of Rantha's health. So health is going to be important for Rantha. Third move is Hunter's Volley. At level 6, it shoots 8 arrows at an enemy, each dealing 80% of the physical damage. So damage again. Fourth ability, passive ability, Old Friend. When Battle Poo is alive, Rantha's physical and magic armor are increased by 30%. So armor is going to be important for her. And her leadership ability is the Might of Clans. All allies from the clans gain 25% physical damage increase and 25% magic damage increase. All allied orcs gain 5% lifesteal for each living orc in the party. All allied goblins gain 10% critical damage increase for each living goblin in the party, and all allies from the Pride gain a 5% tenacity increase for each living Pride character in the party. This is the overall best clans leadership in the game right now. It encapsulates everything. Looking at her runes, I want Battle Poo, who is called in to be my second tank, to have as much survivability as possible. He is the meat shield, so putting health on there, increasing her health as much as possible, increases his survivability. So looking at the northern rune, obviously damage, what we learned that damage is important, health is important for the survivability of herself and Battle Poo. We also learned that armor is extremely important. Obviously speed's going to be good for any character, so if you can sprinkle in speed, that's good, but then you want to look for survivability. So looking at her first northern rune, damage is the only possible primary, but then I have shield, speed, health, and tenacity. Then I have the northeastern rune, obviously speed, but I have critical chance, shield, health, and potency. Southeastern rune, obviously armor, but that's beneficial for her kit. We have armor, which hit twice. We have shield, critical chance, and a little more speed. Then I went with an armor primary in the southern rune when I have shield, health, damage, and again potency. Then I have shield in the southwestern rune, which has secondaries of speed, crit chance, damage, and shield, increasing her survivability. And then I put damage in the northwestern rune with secondaries of tenacity, health, critical chance, and shield. Now when it comes to possible synergies for Rantha, obviously Orcs is a no-brainer. She has the best clan's leadership for an overall encompassing clan synergy in the game. The only thing that's really excluded from her synergy is demons when it comes to the clans. So with her, she can be used as the leader for a random mishmash party, so everyone's getting a little boost. She can also be used as a secondary tank because she has the ability to call in Battle Poo. So it'll give you a little more damage than, say, running a Darien or a Salvador or something like that as a possible secondary tank for your team. She can come in and fill that role. So as far as synergies with her, obviously Orcs, anybody from the clans factions, excluding demons. Next up on the list we have Mortha. Mortha is the Orc healer. She is also a gladiator. So let's take a look at her moveset. First move is Ball Lightning. Basic ability, deals 200% of magic damage to an enemy with a 50% chance to damage through a shield. So you take away from that is magic damage. Next one up on her move list is Chain Healing. Heals the targeted ally for 400% of Mortha's magical damage. Then change to the two lowest health allies and heals the first ally by 300 and the second ally by 200 of Mortha's magic damage. So magic damage in the first move, magic damage in the second move. Third move is Personal Curse, and it deals 180% of magic damage to an enemy and gives a random ally shield equal to 280% of Mortha's magic damage. 3 for 3 with damage. Then her passive ability, Shamanism, Mortha gains a 10% magic damage increase for each living orc in the party. So what did we learn here looking at her moveset? We learned that damage is super important for Mortha. So you're probably looking at my runes saying, why the hell you got all health on there? Well, I have all health on there because she is very squishy. I can get secondary stats and the primary stats on health runes doing two things: increasing her damage and also increasing her survivability. If she goes down in a full orc team, cash your check in because it's over with. So that is why I went with 3 health sets, increasing her health by 30%. Keeping in mind that in her moves, damage is really the only important thing. So on the northern rune, obviously I have damage, but it also has shield, tenacity, and then more damage. What we want to do is we want to increase her survivability and her speed. Moving on to the northeastern rune, I have a speed with health, shield, and armor. Again, I'd like some damage on there, but that is the best speed mod I had for her moveset. Southeastern rune, we can only have armor again, so we have armor, critical chance, damage, and health. Looking at her southern rune, we have damage, and then damage, health, tenacity, and armor. In her southwestern rune, we have shield. It has damage, which hit 3 times in the secondary with some armor for survivability, so that's why I put that one on there. And again, in the northwestern rune, I would like damage as a primary, but I've been farming and I do not have one. RNG sucks. But I have shield, health, armor, and then some more damage. Now when looking at Mortha and possible synergies, sadly, she, for me, has real no viability outside of the Orc class. There are other healers in the game that would be more beneficial than her. Synergies, for me, sadly lies straight with the orcs. Next up on the list, we have Corcorum. Corcorum is an orc fighter mage. So let's get into his moves. Basic ability is Lava Boulder, deals 200% of magic damage to an enemy, inflicts burning for 2 turns. Now, that's at level 6, but for level 6, it only has a chance. So keep that in mind. So we need magic damage and potency. Second ability is Storm. It deals 190% of the magic damage to all enemies, a 50% chance to stun for 1 turn when dealing damage. So potency yet again, and damage yet again. Third move, Spectral Beast, deals 360% of magic damage to an enemy. If the target is stunned and burned, all enemies will be dealt an additional 100% of magic damage. So, magic damage and potency. Passive ability, Fealty, adds 30% to Corcrum's potency, and an extra 5% for each living orc in the party. So, when we get into the runes of Corcorum, we learned that damage and potency is very important. Again, though, he is a very squishy character. So we'll be looking for damage, potency, survivability, and of course, speed. Starting with the Northern Rune, damage primary, I have shield, potency, health, and armor. Adding potency, increasing his survivability. The Northeastern Rune, I have speed with shield, damage, shield, and health. The Southeastern Rune, again, we can only have armor, but I have a potency with some more speed, armor, and shield. On the Southern Rune, I have damage with armor, shield, armor, and speed. On the Southwestern Rune, I have shield, critical chance, speed, tenacity, and armor. And then in the Northwestern Rune, I have potency, I have damage, I have shield, I have speed, and then I have shield. So looking at Corcrum's overall ability, we see that he thrives on potency and damage. When you look at synergies, he needs people who can stun. He needs people who can burn to help him apply that AoE on his Spectral Beast ability. So you'd be looking at somebody like a Major Shot. You'd be looking at an Amara. You would be possibly looking, obviously, Tromgar. Obviously, orcs. I don't have to keep saying it, but I will. Next up on the list is a Mar. He is an orc fighter warrior gladiator. So let's take a look at his moveset. Deals 240 to 300% of physical damage to an enemy. Ability 2. This will hurt real bad. Deals 220% of physical damage to all enemies. If the ability deals at least 4 critical hits, its cooldown is reset. Physical damage, but it says critical hits. So we want high critical chance. Ability 3, Rage. Gains a damage increase, a critical chance increase, and a crit damage increase for 2 turns and recovers 50% of his turn meter. So we've learned that critical chance and physical damage help, so he's giving himself more buffs, which is huge. And his passive ability, Ouch, Mar deals 1% more damage for each 2% of his missing health. Hate this ability. Not a fan. So what did we learn from Mar's move kit? We learned he needs damage and critical chance. You want him to go fast, but he gives himself turn meter. So extra speed, and you want him obviously to be able to stay on the board, so survivability. So at the Northern Rune, we have the damage with secondaries of health, damage, shield, and armor. We have in the Northeastern Rune, we have speed, we have shield, armor, potency, and critical chance. Obviously, I don't need the potency in there, but an extra 1.08% of critical chance is why I have this mod for him, or rune. First time I did that in the video. Damn it. Southeastern Rune, we have armor, which is our only one we can have. We have health, speed, damage, and damage. Great rune for him. Now, in the Southern Rune, I have a critical chance, giving him 6% critical chance with health, damage, armor, and armor. Then in the Southwestern Rune, I have health, so we have damage, tenacity, health, and armor. And then in the Northwestern Rune, we have damage, tenacity, shield, armor, and critical chance. Now, I thought about putting all critical chance in there on him as a rune word set, which would give us 24% more critical chance. That is a possibility, but I also want him to be heavy in the damage. I went critical damage, giving him 30% more critical damage. So when he does land those crits, it does do a little more increase of damage rather than just resetting the cooldown. I kind of wanted it the little best of the both worlds. So that's why I went there. But putting all critical chance runes on this guy isn't a bad idea. So when it comes to Mar and his possible synergies, I only really see two things. Obviously, orcs. He could also be used in a nuke team, AoE nuke team, potentially, like with a Snorri and a Revol. Even though he doesn't have the bleed effect, he has that brutal AoE mass damage like the other ones, so he could be kind of used in that. But for the most part, his synergies really lie within the orc. Next on the list is Dieselrog. He is the new addition to the orcs, so let's take a look at his move kit. His first ability is Cyberpunch. Deals 240% of physical damage to an enemy, removes 2 buffs from the target for each living goblin in the party if the hit was a critical. So, what we learned from that is physical damage. He has synergy with the goblins, but he also needs to have critical chance. BFG is his second ability, deals 210% of physical damage to all enemies. 70% chance to inflict a armor decrease for 2 turns. So again, we have physical damage, but we also have the chance to inflict a debuff, so potency becomes important for Dieselrog. Third ability, Fuel to the Fire, gains an accuracy increase and a damage increase for 2 turns. Recovers 15% of turn meter for each living orc in the party. If there are allied old lore on the battlefield, he recovers the same amount of turn meter and gains a damage increase for 2 turns. If there are enemy Darien on the battlefield, Dieselrog gains cheat death and debuff immunity for 2 turns. So what did we learn here is that he can buff himself for damage and accuracy. He recovers his own turn meter for orcs in the party, and he also has synergy with old lore. And his passive ability, Dieselrog gains 10% physical damage increase for each living orc in the party, and a 10% critical chance increase for each living goblin in the party. This move is pretty cool because it ties into his first basic ability, where he needs goblins in the party to remove debuffs, but it also applies to his orc synergies, so he can increase his damage. So depending on what you're running. So looking at Dieselrog's kit, we learned physical damage and critical chance and potency are the most important things. We also want survivability and of course speed. Northern Rune, damage primary, but we have critical chance, potency, tenacity, and health. Good rune for him. We also, in the Northeastern Rune, we have a damage primary with health, potency, critical chance, and damage. The Southeastern Rune, we have armor. It's the only thing we can get. Critical chance, tenacity, damage, and armor. In the Southern Rune, we have crit chance, shield, damage, potency, tenacity. Then we have, in the Southwestern Rune, we have a shield because of the secondary benefits of the health, damage, armor, and more shield. In the Northwestern Rune, we have potency with some speed, armor, and shield. Preferably with like a damage in there, but this will do for what I need. Now looking at the rune word sets, could go all critical chance on him. We could go damage and a potency set, but I really like the ability to increase his damage and increase his critical chance, which gives him the opportunity, if run with goblins, to remove the buffs. So looking at Dieselrog, get his max potential, he's got to be run with orcs or goblins. Next up on the list, we have Hard Orc. I don't have him unlocked, 20 out of 50, but Hard Orc to me is very close first best orc, tied with Tromgar. So let's take a look at his moveset. Basic ability, Punch in the Teeth. He deals 240% of physical damage to an enemy and inflicts bleeding for 2 turns. So physical damage and inflicting a debuff. Always want potency. Ability 2, Power Solo. Deals 200% of physical damage to all enemies, a 70% chance to apply ability block for 2 turns. So we want damage and potency. Move 3, Devil's Horns. Gains cheat death, regeneration, and damage increase and applies it to 4 allies for 2 turns. Beast of a move. Love this move. And his passive ability, Hard Orc removes 1 debuff from 4 random allies at the start of his turn. Again, beast move. So I don't have hard orc unlocked yet. So let's just kind of theory craft about his runes. Reading his move set, we learned that damage and potency are the most important thing for him, with speed and survivability coming in second. So what I would do is I would put a damage set on him with a potency secondary set. Synergies with hard orc, you want anybody potentially who runs off of bleed, so he could be put into a Revol team, he could be put into the Revol Snorri combination. Obviously an orc team, he is a great plug and play character. The final orc, Mordoom, he is an orc fighter mage dragon slayer. Let's take a look at his moveset. First move, Shadow Arrow. Basic ability, deals 260% of magic damage to an enemy and removes 2 buffs. So we're removing buffs, and that is a chance earlier on, so we're looking at damage and potency. Magic and Monsters is his second ability, and it summons 2 demon henchmen with 50% of Mordoom's health and 80% of his damage. So health is going to be important for Mordoom, and damage. Ability 3, Rock's Curse. 400% of magic damage to an enemy, inflicts armor decrease, a tenacity decrease, slow, a damage decrease, a potency decrease, as well as ability block for 3 turns. That is insane. Holy crap. And ability 4, his passive ability, Take the Inferno seriously. Mordoom gains 10% tenacity and 10% potency for each living demon in the party. Now I wonder if the demons he summons count as party members. Something to keep in mind. Now obviously Mordoom isn't in the game yet, but theory crafting his runes, I would possibly look for a damage set with a health secondary, with looking for potency and speed, and obviously then filling in with survivability as secondary stats I would want on them. Now as far as his synergies go, obviously orcs, and from what we've read, demons. And without seeing him play or his move kit, I can't really call him a plug-and-play character yet, but I would definitely love to see this guy in action other than fighting him in basic nodes. So that's where we stand for his synergies as of now. So here we are, everybody. The end of the first For Noobs series. That was the breakdown of the orcs. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Thank you to all the subscribers out there. If you're not a subscriber, click that subscribe button down in that corner. Become part of the family. The next faction up is humans. And that's all I got for everybody. I'll see you all in the next one. Be safe. I'm out.